I started eating churrasco again because the last couple of churrascos I had were very rubbery.
Listen.
Do we know who
Yeah.
goes?
At Whole Foods. Yeah.
Pepper and grill, you're done. You're August.
Yeah.
She spoke very highly. He took a
Why I tell you?
tortilla, stayed with her, comforted her.
Oh, it's just like Kobe beef.
Can go to my place.
I always have some.
Yep.
Friday night, I
What's
put
good
Friday
time?
night, I do
Yeah.
That's fine.
fresh. I
Noon?
never freeze meat.
And then
Noon?
these-
¿Qué hora? Yeah,
these-
can go.
these,
Noon, yeah, I have noon, but
cracker
I didn't have a
crust
place.
Big.
Let me
Cheese kind of stuff
No,
in it.
dale, dale.
let me think about that.
My wife had 3 of them.
Like a cream tart
And
pie.
she says, I'll save you one.
How are you?
I didn't get one with my meal.
What's
I said,
good,
I'll go
man?
get one later. So I went up to get one and it was gone. I came back and hers were
I
gone.
haven't
I
been-
said,
You can have that every
I said, I thought you said
Yeah,
you were sure.
no, that's why anyone who talked to me about this weekend, I said.
She got two. She thought two.
She nailed them all.
Especially Saturday.
I tell my husband I don't share desserts, so
I don't share desserts.
no.
Hey,
They were already giving comments last
Yeah.
week, yeah.
no, they had, oye, it's a monstrosity.
No, and they don't meet the setbacks, right?
No,
They just put it up.
Y dicen que están viviendo ahí, ¿no?
Ah,
Que tienen gente viviendo ahí. Well, it's,
Oh.
No, no. this is,
Oh,
With yeah, this.
Yeah.
Ya estamos.
Getting up to 6.3.
Eso, oigan bien. Aquí. Hey. Porque a veces uno empieza a hablar y si se mueve. All you have to do is move away a little bit.
Yeah, and you can't hear it.
Say when I said something. And hear it. Y sobre todo,
Sí, claro.
everybody wants to hear it. Then,
Yeah.
Bueno, toda la vida me mandaron a callar. I used to have a high pitch. All those brothers. son todos- Sé que estaban peleando, cada vez que estaban hablando. Y cuando el muchachito me decía, pero nada, it's my natural voice. Yes, I'm moderating, I'm getting older, pero
Yeah.
certainly good for teaching.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, is Erica, are we okay? Are we set? Okay, thank you. Um, Is there, nobody from the city is attending virtually? Do we have anyone
No.
attending virtually? Anyone trying to get on virtually
No,
that you know of to speak? Okay. Oh. Lost William. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Mitchell,
Here.
Vice Mayor Bravo,
Here.
Councilman Best,
Present.
Councilman Fahet,
Here.
Councilman Vasquez.
Here.
There is a quorum present.
Okay, thank you. All stand, please, for the invocation. Oh, Heavenly Father, we ask that you guide and watch over us tonight as we make decisions that are sometimes difficult, but that we know that while we may not all agree on the items in front of us, we all share our great love and passion for our beloved city. Thank you. Please, everyone join in for the Pledge of Allegiance. pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you, everyone. Welcome to our meeting tonight, the last meeting of February. For those that are in the audience and also everyone that is attending virtually. We're going to move with the first agenda item, which is awards and presentations, and we have none today. So we'll move to open forum. I just wanted to mention during open forum, it is an opportunity for residents to talk to us, to have all of us here and listening, bright-eyed and ears open, so that you can address all of us. But it is a one-way communication. You address us, we don't respond to you because it's not an agenda item. And so it's not something that has appeared that we're going to discuss, but we will listen to you. And after the meeting, either we, different councilmen, council people direct the staff to take action, or you can contact our staff, or our staff will reach out to you and follow up on your issue. So I do have under open forum, our first person is George Santine. Welcome.
George Santine, 1249 Heron Avenue. I've been resident here for 23 years. I know you guys had a recent workshop on the overlay district, the Gateway district, and unfortunately I missed it, and probably will be talked later. And I appreciate that you guys are doing your best to handle the former, or I should say the current zoning. With recent transactions we just had on downtown, I think this is even more important because it's just a matter of time where the council will get 2 new redevelopment projects. One is probably going to be a sister copy of the one that we just have right now. And I want to first start out by saying that I am not against progress. I was president of the Chamber of Commerce here years ago. I'm a commercial property appraiser, does feasibility studies, and I'm in real estate. But sometimes there's things that have to be done the best you can to keep your community the way we want it. So I wanted to at least be clear about that. But recently at a task force meeting that I've been going pretty frequently, I think some members might have been there as well, I was kind of left with my mouth open. And it's my fault for not being involved enough. I was very involved before, but with my daughters going high school and college soccer, I kind of took the sidelines. So in a way, it's my fault for not being involved in knowing exactly the process where that whole zoning was changed. But one of the things that was brought up that really floored me was about some of the concessions, and this always happens in negotiations. You got to make concessions with developers of what to do that's favorable to you as a city and also to the developer. Happy medium is always a good way of doing business. But I was informed, or that we were informed at that meeting, that a lot of the concessions for parking was supposed to have some return to our city in a monetary form, for future parking, parking garage, if we had to purchase land for it, whatever the means were. I really would like to know, if I know not everybody here was there during that time period, but I would like to know if that was the case, where was those funds allocated to? And if they were, then if they weren't, then I'd like to know that they weren't and why they weren't. But I was informed that that was part of the deal. And I just want you guys to kind of clarify when you can, obviously not today, if this is true. And that way, the next time that we go into this whole negotiation with future projects, that does not go under the rug. Because to me, there has to be a happy medium, but to have something that is going to be helpful to our city, and then later on we find out that it was, passed by, to me was completely threw me off. And it could be wrong and it could be false, but to me, it seemed like something that needed to be brought to attention. And I heard it, so I'd like to know from the council and city manager, anybody who was present during that whole negotiation, whatever happened with the funds when there was concessions made for parking. So I guess my last thing is, I know that that's already, like they said, horse has gone out of the barn, but there's a way of controlling the horse. Put them in a trailer, you put a saddle on them and try to at least get them to where you want to go. So I think the city has tools. I'm sure the city attorney will give you guys some guidance, but there's tools to kind of correct or amend the district, the overlay district or gateway overlay district. And just want you guys to consider that. I think that now with the future potential projects, they're coming. There's nothing wrong with it, but we need to be more involved, including me as a citizen, that we get this right. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Santon. Okay, the next
Thank
person
you.
I have, and I have Nihal Pereda. Now, Nihal, let me just ask you, because you've signed up under an agenda item and open forum. So which do you want to speak in? Would you prefer open forum?
Make your comment.
Madam Mayor, I was under the impression that I could sign up for both. I
Is
just wanted.
it the same project? They're going to talk about the same topic?
No, I just want to touch upon some of the facts that George brought up, but strictly, I want to emphasize and make it emphatically clear.
Okay, so
I am a
on,
private resident. I'm not representing
Okay.
any task force. I live at 217 Duval Drive, and my name is Nihal Pereira. I'd just like to touch upon some of those mentioned items and mention
Okay,
a couple of things. I probably take 1 minute, and then I would like, with your indulgence, Madam Mayor, to speak on item 12A.
okay, so when you speak, so whatever you have to say on item 12A, you leave it for item 12A.
Yes.
And then go ahead and speak under open
Right.
forum. Is that good? Okay,
Yes.
sounds good. All right,
Mayor,
thank
just wanted to remind the 2-minute limit. I
Yes,
forgot to
and I'm
mention that
sorry, I
actually.
didn't specify that for open forum, we have 2-minute limit. However, when Captain Pereira speaks under the agenda item, I had already told him that he would be allowed to speak for 5 minutes because he has something more detail. So, but for this, it'll be 2 minutes for the.
I very much appreciate it, Madam Mayor, Maria Michelle, Vice Mayor Jackie Bravo, the Honorable Mr. Bob Best, Councilman for many years, who has many parallels of my career in the past years, same airlines we've worked for. Dr. Walter Fajette, thank you for your service and being a principal of our educators in the school. And Dr. Victor Vasquez for your tenure with Miami-Dade College and for all the historical things you have done. City Manager Mayor, Mr. William Alonso, and Assistant Mayor Tammy Romero, and City Clerk Erica Gonzalez, and City Attorney Heda Sarah. I want to mention all of you because I, for one, really appreciate everything you all have done. I want to make it emphatically clear that I'm only trying to do what I have neglected to do, like George, because I was bringing up 4 kids who were young, and people who have young kids understand that. Mentioning what he talked about, the parking issue, I have been advised that Mr. Manny Vargas and Mr. Valdemir, I believe I got the name wrong, have purchased a building, 2 buildings for $6.1 million. And I, as a private resident, would be talking to them to get their feedback, because the problem we are having is, unfortunately, people are unwilling to attend these meetings, whether it be the city council meeting, as you all know, or any other board meetings. So I would like to talk to them as well as a city resident. And with that, I just wanted to mention that I appreciate everything you all are doing and appreciate the fact that you're allowing us to speak. And Madam Mayor, what you did 2 days ago was commendable, to speak to the residents. I was unaware how many people showed up, but that is something new and needs to be done by all concerned to involve the city. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you, Captain.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have no one else signed up for the open forum. Let's move to approval of council minutes, February 14th minutes.
Through the chair, motion to move 6A.
Second.
Any discussion? Call the vote, please.
Vice Mayor Bravo,
Yes.
Councilman Best,
Aye.
Councilman Behet,
Yes.
Councilman Vasquez.
Yes.
Mayor Mitchell.
Yes,
The motion carries.
thank you. Okay, the next agenda item is the reports from boards and commissions, and we have a Business and Economic Task Force recommendations, I guess an interim report in our package, and I don't know if anyone wants to address any of them. I'm going to go ahead and get started addressing each of those, the three recommendations that they made. Now, the business, I just want to clarify, the Business and Economic Development Task Force was a task force, a new task force that our council, this council created. September was their first meeting. We gave them 1 year. We didn't want this to be an advisory board that just goes on and on and on. We wanted to quickly get information within a period of a year of persons that we felt, a wide variety of persons to represent our city, business owners, residents who are heavily involved, persons from outside Miami Springs who are very knowledgeable in business development. So we created a task force of 13 individuals and actually tasked them with, within 1 year, providing recommendations to the council on how we can attract or what types of new businesses Miami Springs should attract. I think anyone that lives here knows that we tend to have some businesses that we have a lot of them, and there's a lot of other businesses that we have none here in the city. So we wanted information on their recommendations on what types of new businesses we should attract to Miami Springs, and also how the council can assist existing businesses to thrive, to do better, not just to survive or get by. It breaks my heart every time, we have a new business and, within a few years, we see that they're closing or leaving. So we're looking forward to, we asked for a report within 1 year. The council has been meeting has had 6 meetings, I guess. And I know one of the big things that they're working on is surveying our residents, finding out, from our residents, what they would like. So I think that's going to be a big part of their final report. And that obviously may change wherever their thoughts are right now. But so anyway, we're very grateful to the persons that are serving on the task force. The meetings are very interesting. A lot of feedback is being provided to me, and I think to any of us on the council, of just food for thought and things to work on. But again, we're looking forward to the final recommendation, or not the final, yes, the final report with the recommendations of the task force. And again, I want to stress that the task force, we've asked them to look not just at Westward Drive or the downtown business district, but a really huge opportunity for the city of Miami Springs is the business district all along Northwest 36th Street, and also the Abraham track. And developing business in those areas would benefit us greatly and would benefit our residents in that our millage rate could be lowered. We have one of the highest millage rates in Miami-Dade County because we are primarily a residential community and not a business-oriented community. So we're looking forward again to the final report at the end of the year when they've had time to kind of all the information that's going back and forth, pull it together, and hone down on where they think our priorities should be. That said, we do have interim recommendations. Right now, I'll call them interim because they're not part of the final report, and they may be in the final report, they may not. It just depends. So the first one, I'm kind of confused. I'm just looking at this and it's recommendation B, C, and D. We're missing A.
Item A was questions for a survey. They had deferred that item to the next meeting so that they can gather their
Okay, so
questions.
I know they're
for-
still working. That survey hasn't
Right,
gone
it
out,
has
and
not-
that's going to
not yet.
be, in my opinion, that'll probably
Mhm.
be a big part of what their final report is, because it's actually asking not just the 13 task members, but the community, what they would like to see in Miami Springs, what direction they would like to head, and I'm looking forward to that. Okay, so if we go to, and that's in progress, the survey, again, it's the task force is doing it. Those of us on the council, when we attend the task force, we, say hello or just minimal words, but it's the task force, that are discussing among themselves and will provide us the final recommendations. So item number B, on their interim recommendations is improving the city's code to benefit local businesses, review the current code for the color palette and previous signage recommendations. So, and these are ones that were made by the Architectural Review Board in 2009, 2010, and 2011. Anything that we're doing now, we have to revisit, particularly if it involves grants. Nobody allows us to apply for grants and, and hand over a report that's very old. It's like an appraisal for real estate. Doesn't matter that the property was worth $1 million last year. It matters, what it's worth now and what properties are selling around for it. So, but we definitely, the information that has been provided in the past is information that we use in making our final decisions on things. The status of our code, our codes. When we had our workshop, the city council had our first workshop as a new council in last year, I think in May. And one of the things that we agreed on when we were setting priorities is that we have to update our code. Our city code is, the city was incorporated in 1926. It's not, like I say, it's not like Doral that, is 20 years old. Pretty much their codes are pretty up to date with, what state requirements are, what county requirements are. A lot of our codes are very outdated because they were started, either in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, all along the way, even in the 70s. So this is a can that's been kicked for a long, long time down the road of, our codes are old. They need to be updated, but it's very costly to do that. It takes a lot of time. And this council agreed in our budget, in our new budget, our fiscal budget of 21, 22, to allocate money to start with one code, and it's the sign code. And the color palette and everything else will fall into that. And it's not, that's just one of a lot of codes. We're nowhere near, but at least we're making an effort. And hopefully in future years with budgets, our council and other councils will tackle that and decide, look, we've got to take a bite, we've got to bite the bullet and spend some money updating our codes. We can't just keep complaining about them. So that will be addressed. The color palettes, signage, and everything else will be when we update our code, our codes, which are going to be probably, this isn't a simple process. It takes a long time, but just we're on the path to that eventually. The other agenda, well, does anyone want to say anything on that in the council?
No, through the chair, I think we've taken the logical step, and legal's got it right now. So let's see what they
Okay.
come up with. I think
But it will be a lengthy process. It's
Yeah.
not something that's going to happen. And the
And
color
that-
palette, signage, the sides of signs, what signs we allow and all this. There are a lot of, and my understanding is even Supreme Court regulations that affect our current code of what we have in place. And, if you allow certain signs, you have to have a certain size. Everything has to be that size. So we need to bring that up to date. The other recommendation is small business incentive programs. And that, I guess, unless someone else knows what kind of incentives, I'm not sure what incentives, if we're talking about monetary or community activities for them. So I guess that we'll file it away. I will, in my mind, that we need to look for research incentive programs, but I guess perhaps I would like the task force to provide more information as to what kinds, for the city to research what kinds of incentive programs, or a little more information, unless someone knows here on the council.
I think through the chair, I think at the last task force meeting, that was discussed. And I don't think they were talking about reduced rents or anything like that, as you suggested, monetary. But more somehow recognition for them, for the city to get behind new businesses a little better than we have. That was one of the things that was brought up. There was two or three more, but it was kind of unsaid at the end of the discussion about what was really meant by that. And I think people walked away thinking about it further. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So
I
perhaps,
appreciate
I
it.
mean, this is definitely something for us to think about. And, you know,
There's a couple members. There's a couple members here. Maybe they can straighten me out on that.
Well, I think, you know, since this isn't we're not dealing with the board, it's not fair to ask one member of the board to, you know, speak for them because they're not designated for that. So I think this is certainly something for us to look into, but perhaps we can get more information, at least in their final report, as to, and I think probably part of this will be when they survey the residents, because, you know, until the residents are surveyed and you get that information, you know, we certainly want to hear that information and use that to incorporate, you know, where we need to go, how we want to promote new businesses and to assist our existing businesses.
Through the chair.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, no, I agree that we need more clarification, and usually to incentivize new businesses means, you know, less taxes or whatever. I mean, we don't know exactly what that is. I think the spirit, I was not at that meeting. The spirit was how do we attract new businesses and what kinds of businesses. I was in the meeting when we talked, I talked about it, was surveying, because they talked about surveying business owners, and I recommend that we also survey residents to get
Yes.
their input. I think that's going to go a long way towards defining which way and where and how we move forward. And again, just to echo something you said earlier, we're looking at all the community portions of our city. So
Yes.
it's going to be, I'm looking forward to seeing what they come up with.
Okay. So definitely that's something for us to think about. Perhaps if any of us have ideas on that, on research incentive programs in particular, we can let William know and he can look into that. But we'll ask if this is one of the final recommendations on from the board. I'm hoping that they'll clarify more on that, and they'll probably have more clarification once they do the survey to the residents and to the business owners, and have more idea, especially from the business owners, what kind of incentives would help you, would have attracted you to Miami Springs sooner, or would help you stay here. And then the last item on this interim recommendation is recommendation on public parking. And I think that we've heard that message loud and clear from the task force. We have to do something about improving the parking situation in, you know, in our downtown area particularly, but throughout Miami Springs, as new development is occurring, for us not to take that in mind, and, you know, to think that, you know, no matter how much, and that's something that we certainly discussed at the workshop last week, to think that we can keep encouraging new development without considering, you know, where are people going to park? How are they going to be interested in being here if parking becomes difficult? So to that, and particularly because at the task force, this was something that was raised very early on, the difficulty in parking, we've applied for a grant for a parking study, a comprehensive parking study. There was some information, you know, on previous council along 20 years ago. I think there was a study done. What is that? Dover Cole?
Dover
Right.
and also the Corradino
But there
study.
again, for grants that we're applying, they'll never accept a report that's 20 years old. It doesn't matter how good it is or anything. We would have to do a new study. We would have to do new information to get grants for any kind of improvements that we would, unless we want to pay for them ourselves, which I think that would be very difficult for us to do anything substantial given our budget. So the idea would be that we identify where we should go, and then we apply for grants to improve our business development. But to that end, we did recently apply, and based on what has been discussed at the Business and Economic Development Task Force about the need for parking, we've applied for a grant through the TPO for a parking study. Is that just for the downtown area, right, William? For the downtown area. So we haven't received it yet, but it looks likely. I hate to say that but it looks likely that we will be getting that, or if we will, at least we'll know within the next few months, probably by the summer or so, we'll know if we have that. And as soon as if we do get that, we will move forward with a parking study. The parking study will provide us with information that then we can use to apply for grants for developing our business area. Because
Mayor,
it has to be timely information.
If I could chime in, I think unless I misinterpreted it, and I'll leave it for you guys to let me know if you think I did. I believe that last suggestion from the Business Development Board was speaking specifically to, and I think that there was a study done that recommended this. It's basically widening the sidewalks and taking one lane of the westward traffic away to have on-street parking and then wider sidewalks. So I think that specifically is what they're talking about for those 2 blocks from Circle to Park Street. So I think if that's a kind of interim recommendation, I think it's something that needs to be considered. I also if I could since I'm talking about it, can chime in. I think that there's a concern there that I think also has to be considered in terms of what it would do to the traffic. We have a lot of traffic that uses westward as a main artery. What would that mean in terms of diverting traffic? Like, are more people going to be going down Pinecrest? Are more people going to be, are more people going to be using Deer Run? How are people going to be avoiding that? Because I think I get the thinking behind it, right? I think of like Main Street and Miami Lakes, right? Where they have that area in Main Street where it's one lane, it's on-street parking, you have retail stores. It really does promote kind of pedestrians walking, shopping, that kind of thing. I get the thinking behind it. And I think it's something that needs to be considered. But I think at the same time, we also have to consider what that will do to the majority of the people that live on the west side and that rely on Westward Drive as an artery, as a thoroughfare to get to different points, and what that would do to the traffic. Because I get it. Like, you want to kind of calm traffic and promote pedestrian traffic rather than vehicular traffic in order to promote the type of business that you want in that area. I think that it's an interesting thought that needs to be considered, but I think also we need to think about, what the consequences of that would be and what it would mean to residents in other arteries in the city that, as traffic gets diverted in other directions.
Okay, thank you, Councilman. And that's why the studies are the ones that provide us with that information, because they're critical. Especially when we're spending large amounts of money or changing, it's not something that we can just say, oh, we're going to widen the sidewalks or, and again, the parking situation. What you hear, and I know what I've heard the task force is, everyone wants to park in front of their business. There's no way that, all of us, if we want to go to one restaurant, we're all going to park in front of the restaurant. It's just not going to happen. And then we hear that, we need a parking garage. Well, if we build a parking garage, that doesn't mean that it'll widen the sidewalks, but you're not going to be parking in front of the residents. So I think we're hearing a lot of information, and that's why these studies are important, and they're important that they're right now, because I think one of the things we discussed at the workshop is that we're in a very different situation than we were even 2 years ago. We've had this pandemic. People are not working like they used to. They're staying at home. They're working. I mentioned the 60 Minutes segment of the Great Resignation. 1 in 7 people are working from home now, where it was 1 in 67 before the pandemic. So that has totally changed even the idea of parking, where we used to think of, if we have retail, the people that, come in and live in the apartments or might be using that parking are going to be at work during the time, and the retail can use those parking spots. And then, in the evenings, the homeowners are there. Obviously, that's not the case anymore, because more and more people are going to be working at home. And even with the estimates, the predictions are that even though it's likely less, there's going to be an uptick in the number of people that are going back to the office, it'll never be like, or if it is, it's not going to be for the 20 years. It's not going to be something that happens overnight in the next 5 years. So these are all things that the studies are really critical
Yeah.
because they're using real-time information of what, is happening now.
Through the chair?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
William, question. For the parking study, does that include the parameters of Westward as well?
Yeah,
Okay,
the whole CBD district.
okay.
Okay, so
through the
we do
chair.
have that grant in place. Now, Councilman Vasquez, you have this as an agenda item, kind of what
Yeah,
Councilman.
that's what I
So
was gonna
let's
say.
wait, let's continue that
I was
discussion.
gonna say that.
Right, when we get to your agenda item that you've,
Yes.
okay. So I guess, if there's anything, chime in. I'm just trying to move this along, is for that recommendation on the public parking. We have applied for a grant. That was something that we didn't need to wait for the final recommendations from the Business and Economic Development Task Force, because clearly a parking study, a grant on parking study is something that is going to be part of the final recommendations. We don't know exactly how, but that will be part of it. So,
Mayor, I have a question. To what extent is, I'm not proposing the way, actually, I'm not proposing anything. I guess my question is like, to what extent is traffic going to be considered as part of that study? I know that there's traffic studies and I know that there's parking studies. But there are cases in which those two things are kind of intertwined, like when.
correct me, William, we're the ones that decide that. First, we need the grant money, and then we're the ones that decide the parameters of, of what we want in the study.
Right.
So when we request
And
the
it's two
study,
different animals.
Right.
What we want to concentrate on, what I would recommend is a master parking study.
Mhm.
Just parking, not traffic, because traffic is good when you have a new development.
Yeah.
And you ask for a traffic study or what the effect of that development will be on it. But right now, what we want them to look is the businesses that are there now, what the potential is for new businesses and what the parking requirements are now and what they will be in the future. So they can come back with recommendations as to things that we can do. to plan
but
for
the
future.
traffic part of it is something that we can put in there that we want to know.
like-
And the parking, to give us options. If we put parking here, how will that improve? I mean,
Right,
that's
because
definitely
in some
something,
cases, right.
how will that
parking idea
improve,
will affect traffic.
traffic, or will it, this option will cause traffic will provide a lot of parking, but may make traffic more difficult, or this option will provide a little less parking, but will then continue, improve the traffic flow. So those are all things we can request. I mean, my intent is,
Yeah.
my thoughts are that we would include that in the study, that we would be looking for something like that.
I think Mayor, I think I'll hold my comments until we get to 12A. after
Okay.
that, yeah.
All right. So is there anything else on the recommendations of
She had a
the,
question.
No, I'm gonna wait till 12:08.
okay.
Thank you.
You want to just
All right, great.
go slowly now?
Pardon me?
She's asking if you want to do 12A now.
Oh, okay. No, that's a good idea,
There's
Heidi. Let's
consensus,
go
yeah.
ahead. We're already in the middle of it. Yep. So, okay, let's do that. Let's move agenda item 12A to now, if that's okay with, there's consensus with the council. Okay, we'll move that one forward to right now, and that way, we keep the momentum.
You could do
Um,
12B too.
That 12B is the workshop.
Yeah, that's your item, Mayor.
I think it'll all
Well,
fit.
we'll see. Okay, well, let's see how with 12A. Okay, so let's do this. 12A is Councilman Vasquez's agenda item, so I'll let you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When Walter started talking about different things, I said, yeah, we're going to be addressing this. I want to make a clarification though before I begin, because I saw the item specifically mentioned the Business Economic Development Task Force. And I think you mentioned Mr. Pereira can direct that a few minutes to that issue particularly. But what I wanted to say is this. My thinking about Westward is more broadly than extending sidewalks and parking and so forth. That's where I'm coming from. And so I wanted to clarify that and make those comments before I begin. Okay, so sorry.
Councilman, do you think we should have the captain, because he wanted
Yeah,
to do the
well,
public speaking before?
no, but I'd rather have the councilman start the purpose of, your agenda item.
Yes, yes. And the thing is, where I'm coming from is to think broadly about what I like to call Westward Drive / Main Street, right? In terms of enhancement, an initiative to enhance that area. You know, we all hear it, we all feel it. Residents feel that Miami Springs still has a small town feel. And westward between the Circle and the Baptist Church is the most iconic small town feel roadway that we have in the city. We got some very important ones, Curtis and all that, but it's westward, the one that gives us a little bit of that quaint. You mentioned Miami Lakes and so forth. So it is the the Circle at one end, which is probably the most emblematic feature of the city, and then Westward Drive. So I'm looking at it from that perspective. Even though, we have Northwest 36th Street and some other small businesses area, my thought is, how do we conceptualize enhancing that corridor where we look at, and I believe that particular area, that particular hub has a tremendous potential for economic stimulus and, if you will, a renaissance of Miami Springs, and for small businesses in the area. So what I like for us to do is to get some general consensus around the idea of an initiative that will consider all these aspects plus a few more in terms of Westward Drive. And what I mean by that is that we look at, rather than look at it piecemeal, and I believe it's important, the piece that Nihal is going to talk about, whether we have some concerns or not, it's the task force looked at business parking issues and rerouting and redoing some things there, whether it's angle parking for the first 2 blocks. I want to think about Westward Drive as a 4-block area from the Circle to where the Baptist Church, because that's where almost all of the business activity on Westward is. Now, not all of it is business. Some of them are businesses in the sense that they're healthcare providers and so forth and so on. So what I would rather see is for us to look at in the form of a study, right? That could be, kind of a viable study based on a general concept that we're in agreement that this is a hub that we want to consider for a significant enhancement, and whether we want to call it a Main Street type of event, even if we don't call it that, that's what it is in reality for us. And so in doing so, we need to take into consideration what is it that we would like to see, whether it's the idea of expanding sidewalks, how do we address the parking and travel, because it is an important route for folks that live in the Birds and other areas. How do we conceptualize the idea of, say, a tree canopy throughout that whole section? There's some trees that exist, but it's not really a canopy that gives it. We have some beautiful ones in this city. And what does it cost to do all these things, right? Because as you will hear when Nihal speaks and Mr. Alonso has shared with me, if you're doing expansion of sidewalks and angle parking, we could be talking about $1 million, 0.5, 2 million, whatever. We need to talk about cost along with the viability of this. And then we need to have other considerations. How is it going to impact the business people when we start tearing up sidewalks and constructing in front of their place? And what are the pros and cons of doing that? In other words, what I'm saying is I'm in favor of a concept to enhance, right, to initiative to enhance this area, but I understand the pros and the cons, right? That we need to factor in, because at the end of the day, what I want to see is as you turn to come into the city, you got that beautiful circle, and then you've got this beautiful segue of Westward Drive, right? That will attract people to just drive in, just to see. So the other considerations will be, monetary, and then what do we get the money for, right? Is it something that we can go to the state for? Are there some things that we could do that we could write grants for? I have, in anticipation, took the initiative of calling a friend of mine whose name is also Manny Perez, but he's a dean at Miami-Dade College, and he's the dean of engineering and so forth and so forth, includes architecture, right? Because I'm also thinking about how do we share the concept of an enhancement of Westward that would engage our residents, right? Before we start tearing up sidewalks and things, is to really to get people's input. And I asked them if we might entice some architecture students from Miami-Dade College to come up with a 3D, right, demo that we could look at, residents could look at, obviously with the input of us, right, to say, hey, what do you think about this, right? And so people get a better feel of what it is that we're talking about. And he's all for the idea. He's all willing to talk to his faculty and see what we could do. He suggested, I bring it to you, the possibility that we could have a little bit of competition among students and give a small stipend to a rendition that we like. But the point is, I wanted the 30,000 mile view, as opposed to specific portions of it, right? Which I think we all need to look at. I'm looking forward to hearing from the residents about what kinds of businesses they want to see. How do we address the concerns of business owners? What other businesses can we attract? Traffic is always an issue. I'm, as the chief knows, I'm a bug about speeding in the city, and it drives me crazy. And I've gotten, I've told people to slow down on Curtis Parkway. Just not gotten a lot of funny returns. But just to give you an example, if you're driving towards the circle on Westwood, it's 30 miles an hour. When you get to the Baptist Church,
25.
it goes down to 25. When you get to the Cozy Corner, it's 20. So whatever else we build in, we need to enhance our signage and reminders. So basically, all I wanted to do, and I don't know if to put it in the form of an motion, was really to approve the creation of a Westwood Drive Main Street enhancement initiative and just leave it at that. And so within that are all these other initiatives coming from the task force, Councilwoman Bravo's concerns and recommendations around parking, the parking study. But I would, and I'll stop with this, really want to see a comprehensive initiative to look at this. Not a commitment to do necessarily X, Y, and Z, but rather, how do we want to revision this?
I just thank you, Councilman Vasquez. I just want to say I'm in total agreement with you that Westward Drive, we should look at it, as the whole Westward Drive. And too often, the businesses that succeed in Westward Drive are the ones right by the circle because they're the closest ones to the circle. Westward Drive has so much potential, so much opportunity for that whole length of Westward Drive to be walkable, like Councilman Fahet said, enjoyable. And hopefully, again, that's why we created the Business and Economic Development Task Force, to get this feedback so that we can have recommendations from a task force that has studied this in depth, heard from the business owners, because let's face it, no matter how much parking is in front of your space, if you don't have the customers, we can create beautiful parking spaces in front, but these businesses need customers. And for some reason, they're not getting it. And it's not just parking. There's a whole bunch of other factors. Anyone that says, oh, it's just because Coral Gables, Miami Beach, and South Miami, and all these other communities, Pinecrest, you don't park in front of, when you go there, you have to walk a little ways, and that's fine. That's, People are willing to get their Coconut Grove for sure. So although parking is extremely important, and I'm not by any means saying that and that's why we're getting the parking study, there's a lot of other things and that are happening that for some reason our business area, this is something that has been discussed forever with councils. I don't know why it hasn't happened before. Obviously we weren't on the council. We can't explain why, what information was available or what could have been done. I know funding is always a huge problem. So that's why any improvements that we're going to do is likely we will have to pursue state appropriations or grants for that, because I don't see how we're going to be able to fund that out of our budget unless we raise the millage rate. And this year, historically, for the first time, we, had the rollback rate. We're very proud of that with the millage rate. So I don't think that that's our intention to now increase the millage rate for improvements to the city when there's all these grants and other opportunities available. But we have to have a plan. We have to know first, what it is we want to do. I think we're all in agreement that, and I'm totally, and I think everyone on the council is, we're talking about Westward Drive as a whole, not just the first 2 blocks of what we're interested in, but, of improving all of that. It should be beautiful. It should be adorable. It should be a place where when people visit Miami, after they visit Miami Beach and Brickell and Wynwood and whatever, it's on their bucket list of visit Miami Springs. It's a cute little town, really accessible right by the airport. And it's, like this hometown, with Royal Poinciana trees and a walkable, a great golf course, a historic mansion, bike path, but we're missing the mark. And hopefully that's the information that we'll get from the Business and Economic Development. Obviously, they're not going to be solving all our problems for us. It'd be impossible for them to do that, although it'd be great if it could, but it'll be very helpful information. And part of that will be their survey of businesses, of finding out what they need, to do better. And also what kinds of businesses, obviously attracting the right kinds of businesses, it's kind of like a domino effect. You attract the right kind of business and then that other kind of business kind of follows and, it kind of feeds itself. All it takes is one business of that kind, and I don't know exactly what that is, to commit themselves to us and to want to be here.
Mayor, I'd like
Sir.
to chime in. So I agree that it's something that we need to think about, and I think that we need to get also the sense of because I think the Business and Economic Development Task Force is doing a great job, of focusing on what they were tasked with, right? Is ideas for doing exactly that. But I think I feel like we, all of these things, and I know I'm not saying anything you guys don't already know, that we need to see what the majority of residents want, and to the extent that they want the Westward Drive to be turned into an economic hub. I think that it's everything's a balance. I know that my wife and I about a month ago went to go see a movie. We were in a part of town waiting on something, so we decided to catch a movie, and we went to Sunset Place. And I was completely shocked at the fact that Sunset Place is a ghost town, and it's 3 floors of empty storefronts in Sunset Place. That was a place that used to be thriving, and now the place is dead. So it kind of, as I was walking, I was like, wow, we kind of have to, be careful what we build, because I think that, and it was a place that was trendy at one time, and then it wasn't. And then, it's kind of like a fickle market when it comes to that kind of thing. I'd be interested to see how the retail stores on the first floor of 1 Curtis Parkway do, right? I think the last I had heard is that they knew for sure there was going to be an urgent care, I think, on the first floor. But I'd like to, just as a word of caution, right? Because I think that we need to think about all these ideas. We also need to get the feedback from residents about what we want. We want to be measured in our approach of and be clear about what it is that we want, because oftentimes you can kind of overdo it and maybe like think a little too far, and then the consequences, so I'm not saying not to discuss these things and not to, as the councilman said, have a comprehensive initiative where we think about what the different ideas are for there. But I think that, one of the ideas that also have to be considered are like, how much is too much? And, when does it kind of go away from being like a charming hometown kind of feel and then try and, because I know that whenever things like this come up and you have the open forum and when this is standing room only, when people are talking, people will come in and will say, and that's just their opinion, there's differing opinions, but people always say like, we don't want to be Main Street. We don't want to be Doral. We don't want to, so I know that there's always going to be that segment of people that want to stand astride history yelling stop and they don't want to do anything. And there's people that want to push and we have to find that happy medium. And I trust that we'll get there if we continue to do the things that we're doing now, which is basically appealing to the residents, asking questions, getting feedback, soliciting ideas from people. I think that we're taking the right steps.
And I think we're moving, cautiously because like you said, and what happens with Sunset and stuff, and I think we've all seen this is, a new place comes up and it cannibalizes what was the other. I mean, there's only so many people that are going to be at areas and, the ones that want to be at the latest place and where to go, every time something else new, I mean, that's happened to all of us. You go somewhere, last time you were there, it was, thick as could be. And all of a sudden like, okay, there's no one really here. And shortly thereafter, they start closing. Yep. So we have to approach cautiously. Our city has been here for a long time. And I think that's what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And the first step is in asking for recommendations from the task force as to give us feedback, but obviously that's what they are. They're recommendations. We have a lot of knowledge of the conditions, situations, limitations within our city, regulations. Our city attorney is constantly advising us of what's possible. I think we all want to jump and do everything, and there's a lot of things that, that's not legally possible. So we will do that. We're doing this cautiously. Councilman Vasquez, I would just like to say, as far as that with the Westward Drive, I'm totally in agreement. We're not, I don't think any of us are thinking of piecemeal Westward Drive. We're talking about the whole thing, but perhaps the initiative itself, in order to even word it, would be wise to wait till we get the final report from the Business and Economic Development Task Force, since they're going to the trouble of surveying businesses and residents, and that will, I'm sure, formulate their final report, that information, once they gather that. So perhaps put that on the back table until.
I was just going to offer some wisdom from how some other places have done this. So I think what Councilman Vasquez is suggesting, and the council everybody seems to be headed in a similar direction, I think is really what you're looking at is a visioning process. Correct. And you can hire a consultant who is a lot more intelligent than at least myself, I can say that much, to give you a vision for how you and your community would like to see that whole stretch of Westward Drive. And I think, you've done that. There's been a lot of references to the Dover Coal study, which is now, of course, very, very, it's like 20 years old. And so it may not be in line with what the city wants, or it may be, but you sort of need to start planning for that planning process. And I think when you get to your budget season, that's one of the things that you may want to see, that you bring back, between now and, I think if it is a priority of the city council for you to have this visioning process, then that can be something that the manager and administration can actually look at, and during the budget season let you know, like, hey, this visioning process is going to cost X. And so I think then it sort of goes hand in hand with the task force's recommendations. And so you're sort of in the middle of budget process, giving this direction, like, we want to budget for this next fiscal year, or maybe it's not possible for next fiscal year and it has to be for a future year. But at least you're making it a priority, and it sort of goes with the priorities strategic workshop that you had a couple of weeks ago, or a month ago, I think. And that way you have the priority that this is something you want to do. This is what it's going to cost. At that point, either you can go forward or not. And then you tie in the task force's recommendations. And as part of what a planner will do as part of that visioning process is have community engagement sessions where they are going to hear from the task force. And I think that's sort of what I was envisioning when we started with the task force, that they would provide these recommendations that would ultimately serve as one of the, or a series of the community engagement sessions that the planner would use. So it does all go hand in hand, and I think it's great to start planning for it.
Through the chair.
Yes.
I think I had mentioned that in the first workshop where I came up. I think what you're referring to was the urban planning development professionals, where they come in and they do a study for businesses specifically to see what works and what wouldn't work in conclusion to, and they do all the surveys and everything. So to just piggyback off the task force. So to be, I think it's a great idea because we can
community that
beautify
just-
the area and, you know, but if we don't have businesses, then there needs to be like a kickback to that, right? It needs to go hand in hand.
A community that just went through this is North Bay Village. They spent about, and I said as the city attorney for North Bay Village, so I'm somewhat familiar with their process. They did a visioning process, which is NBV 100, North Bay Village 100. And so they did a community-wide visioning process. Obviously, geographically, it's a much smaller location, but again, a small city with a similar population. But one of their focuses was to revitalize, so to speak, the Kennedy Causeway area, which is not necessarily the main street in the Miami Lakes concept, but by their visioning process, they then made code changes, zoning code changes, which came after that process, to implement what those pretty pictures and that vision is. And so they are now experiencing significant redevelopment that the community is very excited about. There's major developers that are going in and redoing Kennedy Causeway in a way that it's going to make it very different for those of us who've been in this community for a very long time. So it's very cool to see that process happen, but it's not something that happens overnight.
Okay, Councilman?
Through the chair, all of this is good stuff, and a couple of things have been said that really kind of stuck in my mind. I think that this whole thing that previous councils and we're in the process of wrestling with now hasn't changed a bit, nor has Miami Springs, quite frankly. If you look at Westward Drive 20 years ago and you look at it today, there's not too much of a difference. We've spent thousands and thousands of dollars on studies in this town. Some are still applicable today. I don't think I think the population of Miami Springs is less now than it was 20 years ago. I think if you look at that, you'd see that. So the first thing is vision. And I like Victor's term renaissance. And I think that's what it's going to take. It's going to take a renaissance. It's going to take a bold vision of where we want to transfer this town into. And let's not just piecemeal it. I think we're on the right track by maybe subdividing and locking in on one section at a time, rather than try to do it all in one fell swoop. The second thing after vision, and again, it has to be a bold vision, is history, the history of the town. If you go along Westford Drive, which is roughly 3 football fields, correct me if I'm wrong, from the Baptist to the Circle, some of those businesses have been there for many, many years. Some are vacant buildings. Some have changed the name over the door. Some have gone, some have come back. But there's a lot of businesses there that are what they are. We don't have a renaissance in this town. We need one. So the history of this whole thing, and again, to dust off these studies and revisit them, that to me makes an awful lot of sense. I'm certainly not in favor of doing more studies of information we already have. And again, I don't think it's a lot different than it would have been 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. A recent discussion I had relative to the parking issue along that particular run, Westward Drive, would seem to proffer that you would gain with the medium and the additional parking along the sides, 3 net gains in parking spaces. 3 parking spots. Is that worth it? I don't know. To me, no, it's not. Again, I don't think that we have a real parking problem in this town, but that's later to be discussed. The board's got a lot of work to do yet on this to come forward with us. But it's also important what the board comes up with in terms of what they identify as anchors and incentives. I know the word anchor used to be quite fashionable in this town. You have to establish anchors, and then you build an anchor here and you get an anchor here, and it's going to fill in. Well, it's never happened other than Starbucks, and Milam's Market. That's what we need to be concentrating on. We need to be concentrating on stuff like that. I think this is wonderful, this survey that's coming forward, and we've done these before as well, where residents give their inputs, candle shops and things like this. Maybe another competitive supermarket. I don't know. Just a drugstore, proper drugstore, things like this. So there's a lot on the table here. And then finally, the third thing next to history and vision is finance. And finance is the big thing. It's the kicker. It's how do we afford this? As the mayor correctly pointed out a moment ago, we're not going to kick millage just to do a project. One of the things that has really held us back in the past has been, quite frankly, other projects. Other projects, meaning the community center, the pool, the senior center, the new construction that's going on at Hook Square right now. These things have preoccupied forward thinking in the area of what to do with Miami Springs and how to come up with a concrete vision of what I call, or what Victor tabbed a renaissance in this town. That's what we need. We need fresh thinking. And we have to stick with it. We can't just let it go because we're distracted by other stuff. It's got to stay in the mainstream. So that's my thought, Mayor, and I thank you for my time.
Thank you, Councilman. Anything else? Any discussion before we are going to let Captain Pereira
No.
speak, since is there?
I'm good. No.
Okay. Heidi or William before, because then I'll let Captain Pereira speak on this agenda item. We're going to move on. Is there anything else on this agenda item? Okay. That you wanted to mention? Anything on this agenda item?
No.
As far as discussion? Okay. Captain, you have 5 minutes.
Madam Mayor, thank you for the extra 3 minutes. But since I sat here, I have too many commendations to make for every single council member. I'm flabbergasted at some people's comments that were so positive. I'm ecstatic. I'm going to start by saying, remind everybody, I've lived here for 52 years. I love what the city attorney mentioned.
Take the mask off.
Yeah, sorry. I was going to, I forgot. I was so.
You love to again.
Yeah.
With the mask
Well,
off, yes.
Real briefly, I'm ecstatic and amazed at the tremendous enthusiasm I saw here today. I had never seen this. I appreciate what you all did to, not talking about the task force, but to appoint certain task force that are doing a tremendous job. I'm a private resident today. What I love the city attorney's point of view she made, and this is fantastic. What Dr. Victor Vasquez said is amazing. I mean, that 3D effect is what some people are looking for to sell this. We have to sell this to our people. What Dr. Walter Fugette said is very true about the parking. Those are going to be addressed. Suggestions have been made by a certain task force that will be also put into recommendations. Madam Mayor, what you said, supporting Dr. Vasquez is awesome. Mr. Bob Best, I was really thrilled to hear what you just said. Vice Mayor Jackie Bravo, I've known all along that you were concerned about parking, and I really appreciate what you said. I said I've been here 52 years. I'd like to mention 2 years in particular, 1878 and 1930. The historian might know what these dates are. Those 2 years come to 52 years. It was a once famous naval aviator. He lived only 52 years on this planet. He happened to be a visionary who told the Wright brothers, I don't believe what you said. Aviation is not going to go to South Florida. I'm going to prove you wrong. That is our founder, Captain Glenn Hammond Curtis, lived on planet Earth for 52 years. I happen to have lived here 52 years. I was telling my wife the other day, I may go over the 5 minutes, by the way. Is this a sign?
Captain Pereira, 5 minutes.
I mean,
We
I
have
mean,
an
is this
agenda,
a sign?
so-
Is this a sign? I'm trying to go.
5
I don't want to speak
have
too
to land
fast
the
because
plane.
my accent, you may miss it. Is this a sign? Is this my karma? I want to tell you all up front, money is an issue. One particular individual on some task force had mentioned something that was done incorrectly by the city of Miami Mayor Suarez. Mr. Bloomberg, who's much smarter than I think a lot of people, including myself, and just like other people, have figured out a way that the city of Miami can start making money the correct way. Anyway, that's one way of money. Others, you've all talked about this. I personally we all came to this earth with nothing. I'm going to leave with nothing. I came to America 52 years ago with $8 and one suitcase from the island of Sri Lanka. I am willing to pledge from my personal assets, the pledge money for, I believe so much in Westward Drive and what Dr. Vasquez said. It was supposed to be 4 blocks, but I knew on this, there's no way nobody's going to approve 4 blocks. So as a private resident, I reached out to another 52-year veteran who's lived here, Mr. Manny Perez, the architect. He and I measured the streets. We walked on the streets, and with all due respect, Honorable Mr. Bob Best, it's not 3, it's 75 parking slots based on a study that Manny and I did. Some of you all have this, some of you all may not. Anybody who doesn't have it, I have 6 extra copies that Mr. Perez gave me, and he said he'll give many more to whoever needs them.
Give them there and they'll pass it around.
Yeah, she'll pass it around.
Give them all the.
The clock is running, so pass it, let her pass it
Pass
around.
it, pass it, no, pass it to the.
Oh, give it to her. It'll save you time.
I'm so excited. I was willing to pass it to everybody, and I'm probably going to run out because he only gave me 6 extra. I didn't think this was going to happen today. He gave me that last week. If I knew I was going to hear all these positive comments today, I would have got 100, which I'm sure he would be happy to do because he wants to do exactly what all of you all talked about today. And I've been saying for a long time and didn't have the forum and the time to do it. And as far as a lot of proposals, like we said before, a lot of people don't have the time to attend the meetings. So as a private resident, I've talked to a lot of business owners, and I've taken those ideas, put them in the form of a question, and sent it in, and that will be discussed as part of the study that a certain task force is going to do this Thursday. I know you're looking at the clock.
No, I'm hearing the
Oh.
alarm.
I keep
Time's
saying-
up.
My time's up. So I'm not
So
going to elaborate
30
on
seconds,
Westwood.
wind it up.
I gave you that, and it's 75 slots. Now, I know what Dr. Fajet said. There is a way to solve that parking, the driving issue and traffic calming. And the speed limits are correct that he mentioned. People are driving at 40 for 50 miles an hour. And that's the way to stop this. And by widening the sidewalks, making the tree canopy, we are not going to remove trees. We are going to add trees. This city, when I first came here, had canopies all on Poinciana and Rudlam. Unfortunately, Mr. Tom, the arborist, is not
Nash.
anymore with us. And unfortunately, we need somebody who loves trees because we are Tree City, USA. We got to create these canopies. Look at the places in Miami, Coral Bay. I was just there near the golf course there. You drive all that way. It's residential, I grant you, but it's beautiful. It's been this way since I've lived here. So why are our trees, we are losing trees? What you're doing with the bicycle paths is awesome. That's a great thing. One more and last thing. It's going to be presented at a particular meeting on Thursday. We need to put signs on 36th Street and Okeechobee inviting people to visit us, and we need on the 3 main gateways from Okeechobee to Miami Springs, and the 3 main, including the one on 57 with the permission of Mr. Spencer Dano, who I've known for 3 decades. Hopefully he'll agree with it. Put a beautiful archer with a huge jet. We have to recognize the aviation history community of this historical community of aviation. Curtis Parkway should be renamed Captain Glenn Curtis Parkway, and his statue and his airplanes and his genies, and he was the first person. Nobody knows this. The Wright brothers didn't do this. I did a little reading. He was the one who created the first passenger airplane. He was the one who created the first amphibian airplane. And we have this to sell to the world. We can keep the small town effect, but we can advertise. And in 4 years, it's the centenary. It's a centennial thing. So we are moving cautiously, very cautiously, but we got 4 years to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain. Thank you.
through the
We
ch-
we
Thank you.
appreciate very, I know all of us are very passionate about the city and the majority of residents are too. So, it's, we share your passion for the
Thank you. But
vision.
I got
of
so
what we do.
enthusiastic today because I heard every one of you say something positive about trying to get something moving here. And thank you very much, all of you.
Mayor, through the chair, I'd like the city manager to respond to one of the comments that the captain made relative to the number of parking spots.
Well, I've seen these before. I've talked to Nihal, I've talked to Manny Perez. You should have two plans there, one for 52 parking spaces and one for 75. I just want to explain what the 75 entails closing off Cross Street altogether and
Right.
continuing the median all the way from the circle down to Park Street and closing off Cross Street. So that one brings you 75. It's actually not 75. I talked to Manny because in his parking diagram, he doesn't have any handicap parking. So once you add handicap parking, you lose about 3 to 4 spaces. So let's take the 52. The 52 with 3 handicap, you're actually at 49. When you count and I talked to Manny about this also, and I had our public works director go out and look at both blocks of what we have currently available, parallel parking on both sides. Depending on the size of the car, you can get anywhere from 39 to 42 cars parked right now. So in essence, you're picking up about 8 parking spaces by doing this.
Thank you.
I just wanted you to keep that in mind. The other issue that I talked to Manny about is when you get into widening sidewalks, that entails infrastructure. All the streetlights have to be moved, all the fire hydrants have to be moved, and all of our current stormwater system has to be replaced on both sides of the road. I mentioned that because we're talking money.
No, it's a huge investment, but,
And the other thing which was touched on before is when you close off those 2 streets to do all of this work, what's going to happen to the existing businesses that are there? Because for example, the bank, they have a parking lot where you have a side entrance. So, but the other businesses, their entrances face the front. What's going to happen to them when you close off those 2 blocks for a year?
and also what happens to the residents anywhere near the area, because as we know, for every action, there's unintended consequences. Obviously, if I can't cut across at Westward, where Cozy Corner is to get to where I need to go, I'm going to have to go on some other streets, and that increases. So again, these are all issues. These are excellent recommendations. We share your passion. I know a lot of residents do for, we want to move forward, and that's why we created the task force. I think everyone here realizes, it's been like this forever. I can tell you one thing, like the saying goes, nobody likes change, but nobody likes things the way they are either. So it's like, and realistically, we're trying to move forward with what can be done. Funding will always be a big consideration, but also that any changes that we make, they will impact. Traffic's going to go somewhere. It impacts We're not in an area where, there's another commercial street nearby. The residential streets will have to absorb some increased traffic. So again, these are all things when we do the parking study, when we do these studies, when we get the information from the task force as to their recommendations and the recommendations that we get from obviously those recommendations are going to be very valuable, but they won't be the only ones we use but anything else that comes up, including the comments that Councilman Vasquez made, we'll use that, and I think we're all anxious to set some course in place that doesn't cause a financial burden for our residents. I don't think anyone in this council, based on, rolling back our millage this last year, is looking to do that. So that will require appropriations and grants. And there's no way you're going to get that unless we have studies in place that are current that show the need, because we can apply for the grants, but they won't be looked at. So, and it's very costly to apply for grants. It's time consuming. We have a grant writer that, if you're going to apply for a grant, my thought is, we should have a pretty good chance of being able to get it, of being at the top of the list, of being considered for it. If not, it's, we're spending a lot. It's costly.
Right, I
spend that
understand. And City
So-
Manager Alonso, you're right, you addressed me on this and Mr. Manny Perez. But I put it forward because there were great recommendations of doing a comprehensive study. And I'd like this to be part of that comprehensive study, Mr. Manager, so that the experts who know more about these things than me and Manny will be able to look at
get there, we will
everything, because
definitely
other
look
cities
at
have done that.
all
I
the
mean, I don't want
information.
he mentioned certain cities. I know of other cities all over this country and the world that they have blocked off streets and diverted the traffic and kept the calming and still enhanced businesses and operations. So
Thank you, Captain.
that's all it was.
Through the
For
chair.
your presentation, very much.
Thank you.
Thank
the
you,
chair.
all of you. Thank you.
Yes.
I definitely, it's obviously something that we all agree on. I think this is a beautiful rendering. I do agree with what William said as far as interrupting businesses, but I also do agree that we have to think outside the box and maybe provide temporary parking solutions until a project is done. So maybe, empty parking lots that are not being used right now, or businesses that are not very hot, and then maybe get some consensus amongst the business owners and say, hey, we're going to be moving forward with this. What do you think about this? And like that. But this is amazing.
Yes, and it'll be something definitely that, that we'll include when we get there. We all are in agreement that we want to do something to improve our business district. And again, I want to stress, it's not just Westward Drive. It is, we have an enormous opportunity to improve our business district along Northwest 36th Street. For the life of me, and I think right now with some of the new developments some of the new projects that are going up there, they're for the first time, they're going to take advantage of us being by the airport. Instead of us wanting to block the airport, you can be on Northwest 36th Street and watch planes land and take off, for goodness sakes. I mean, anywhere in the world, that's like a plus. And it hasn't, the businesses that are along North 36th Street haven't realized that. I think some of the new projects that are coming in are going to take advantage of that and have viewing areas, restaurants, and, hopefully things like that, where really sets us apart from other communities. There's no other community in Miami-Dade County, certainly no municipality that can claim that kind of real estate. And like I've said before, I am dumbfounded as to why our community is not more sought after. Our location is a gem. When you think about our access to 112, which leads to I-95, our close access to 826 Palmetto Expressway, you go straight down Lejeune and you're on the 836. I mean, it's just, we're in the center of everything. And the airport, right there too. There's something that we're missing the mark in marketing our community to the right businesses that will help take the financial load off our residents, and make our community a really desirable place to live, to work, to visit, to have your business. So that's what I think we're all agreeing, that we want to head in that direction and trying to determine a path to get there. Okay. So let's go ahead. If there's no other discussion on this particular agenda item, we'll just go ahead, if that's a consensus with everyone, to move to 12B. Please remind me, because I'm very likely after that to go to city manager comments and all this and end the meeting, and we got to go back. Okay, so remind me that we hopscotched over some of this stuff. Okay, so this is 12B is just a request I had asked to discuss the council workshop that we had last week on the Gateway Overlay District. I think it was a very productive workshop. It gave us a chance to discuss the Gateway Overlay District that was created in 2019. And we have a project going up right now in the process of that. We got a lot of information, but we also provided a lot of input of our concerns. I think one of the major ones is that once this new project that's there goes up, how do we keep saying, well, this can apply to any other projects going forward? Obviously, there's only so much of the pie that can be used, in the central area. So it's very important that we approach this in a really sensible concept and make sure that whatever we move forward, we're moving forward in a way that is making our city better and not putting us in corners that we can't back out of. The purpose of the workshop, just to reiterate, was kind of to close the gaps, address some of the concerns with the Gateway Overlay District, and close some of the gaps that were kind of left open or needed to be addressed. So Heidi, if our esteemed city attorney would provide a summary of what we covered there.
Sure. So I think the takeaways from that meeting, as well as the meetings that we had on January 11th and the 18th, are the intent is that they're going to result in a couple of different ordinances and resolutions. At the top of the list, or depending, there's no order to these in order of priority, but just in some, there's going to be a resolution establishing the cost for on-street parking spaces that are counted towards the satisfaction of a property's parking requirement. And that's to coincide with section 150.070.1, which is the Gateway Overlay District. So that's going to be coming before you, hopefully sooner rather than later. And that's something that we'll be working with the city planner on so that he can evaluate what the appropriate fee amount is. I know that there was some discussion of it at the workshop, but I think that we need to do some benchmarking on that and get a better idea of, what is the appropriate rate to charge. So that's number one. Number two is a comprehensive ordinance providing for a few things: cost recovery, so that you can have the level of review that you are seeking, particularly on very technical items such as parking, traffic, if there's landscape requirements that you'd like to see enhanced, things that are going to make the property more attractive in that sense. That is something that cost recovery will allow the city to have its consultants reviewing what the developer's team is proposing at the expense of the developer. It will also provide for notice requirements. There was some concern expressed by the council that you would like to see site plan review noticed, and there was some there was a concern that with variances and other types of approvals, those are noticed to neighboring properties, but sometimes it seems like there may not be sufficient notice, at least that's what the feeling was, that there's not sufficient notice for certain site plans. So to provide for some kind of radius that we'll come up with in conjunction with the city planner of what may be appropriate to notify surrounding property owners about.
Whether they're residential or commercial, that
Correct.
they all are notified of,
Correct. It'll be within a radius of the subject development. So we'll provide for cost recovery notice requirements, and then something that I proposed to you was consolidating the Board of Adjustment and Zoning and Planning Board just as a cleanup, so that we can have one board. It's clear that certain items are going before this one board. They currently, this, but for members of the audience and the public who are watching who may not be as familiar, there's two boards that have a very similar role and are constituted of the same individuals, and they meet in one meeting and then they follow it with a follow-up meeting on a separate board with separate agendas. So this would be an item to consolidate that board and make it a little more efficient and clear for the public that when things need to go before that board. So that's one comprehensive ordinance. And there's the ordinance that sort of opened up a lot of this discussion, and that's the amendments to the Gateway Overlay District. And so the goal of that is going to be to provide, and I'm just going to go down my list again, not in any particular order of importance. You wanted to provide clear regulations on items that may be viewed from the right of way. For example, screening of mechanical equipment such as air conditioning units and things like that. You want to provide for some sort of screening from the right of way so that it's not necessarily something that you can always see. Prohibition of clotheslines, things like that. You also wanted to clarify how developments can obtain FAR bonuses. I'm calling them FAR bonuses in the code. It's creative excellence standards. So you wanted us to revisit what those standards are and what amendments could be made to improve what the city is obtaining as part of that process. I shouldn't say what the city is obtaining, how the development is going to look as part of the development process.
How they acquire the points,
Yeah,
you know,
and-
what
and
are
yes.
the criteria for that is a little more,
A little clearer. We're a lot of it is
a little
the
clearer and hopefully
substance
more
is there.
beneficial to the city that, you know, in lieu of what we're giving.
Clarifying how parking spaces for off-street parking are counted and what the meaning of available parking is. That was something that we discussed quite extensively, so we're going to clarify that. You also asked that we the availability of parking, you wanted us to look at, consider making some kind of amendment that if a developer is going to use on-street parking in as part of their parking count, that it would be within a certain distance. So we don't know what the distance is, but we're going to come up with something and propose it to you. We also have a note here that we're going to amend the notice requirement for surrounding properties, but that's also part of that more comprehensive notice. So it's not specific to the gateway, even though it came as part of the discussion on the gateway ordinance. So those are the things that I have. There's a few other things that we were going to evaluate that we talked about somewhat more casually, but those were the main takeaway points. And if there's anything that I missed.
Through the chair, oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to mention through the chair, flexibility.
Yes.
That was one of the big things that we discussed.
Yes.
Flexibility in negotiation with potential developers and stuff. In terms, what's
Which
the
is
city,
already
which-
built in, and I don't think we're going to touch that.
Yeah.
So
We
it's
did-
clarifying things, but leaving the existing flexibility so that you can adjust because it is such a
Right.
unique area of your.
So as not to boilerplate it.
Maybe
Okay,
you mentioned
William?
it, but I didn't, maybe I didn't hear it. We also discussed about the parking study being done by the city. For the city to contract its own firm to do the traffic and parking study, and that will be part of the cost recovery where we would
Yes.
Yeah, so
reimburse
that,
by the
yeah,
developer.
that'll be part of the cost
True, right.
recovery. So if for us, for a given project, and this, again, back to the flexibility that Councilman Best was just referring to, it's not necessarily that every project is going to require a laundry list of consultants on the city's behalf to review the project. But in those cases where you have such a unique project that's perhaps beyond the scope of your in-house experts, then you would have a team to review, for example, a parking consultant to make sure that the parking is correct or the traffic. There was I forget if it was a right-hand turn or a left-hand turn, but we talked about some of the circulation for certain developments and whether those make sense. And that's where you'd like a traffic engineer. You know, Chris is a city planner. I'm a city attorney. I am not in any way, shape, or form an engineer, nor do I want to be. But that's why you have those people with those specific technical expertises that can then provide you with a different, or they can either confirm that what the developer's team is telling you is appropriate, or they can provide suggestions to benefit the city and to make sure that the development is successful. So yes, that's absolutely part of the cost recovery section.
Is there,
Through the chair?
yes.
Thank you. I don't know if I mentioned it. I don't think I mentioned it in the last meeting, but now that we're talking about this, I was looking to see if there's could be some addition to no overnight parking in certain areas. But if there is going to be an overnight parking, if there's a window there where we can use that as revenue. So for example, I know the city of Miami Beach, they have where you would buy for the year a parking permit, right? I'm just trying to see, because like what Mr. Councilman Fajay said in the last meeting was that you have the multi-families and the residential areas. You have the people that are living there, plus you have visitors that are coming and then using public parking overnight. So I'm okay with that. but I want to benefit from it. So how do we do that? If that's
I-
even a possibility, because I
think
just
that-
don't think
yeah.
it's fair, because you can have abandoned cars. People can just go and then go out of town and the car is there for days. And then so I don't know. I wanted to get your intake on that.
I
think
think
that
that's something
there's-
that we probably do need to look at because of what you raised of, the car could be there forever and we've given it as a resident parking. So I'm not sure. But again, we just allowed them to have, 40 something spaces of public parking for residents. So they're going to be parking there overnight.
Exactly.
So
That's where I'm
pre-
getting at.
And I know we've talked about this, about having a workshop. I don't know how else we can discuss these things except at workshops. Obviously at meetings, there's not enough time and the focus, has to be on certain things, but a parking workshop, which will probably happen, concurrent with the parking grant that we hopefully get on discussing these kinds of things throughout the city, not just for the
Okay.
gateway overlay. But that's a very good point of,
Mayor, I think that once we get the comprehensive parking study, I think that that's what should drive everything. I mean, if you notice that in the apartments that are coming up, they have a parking garage and they have the bottom floor where it's retail only. And so the rest of it is for those residents. And so because the city gave parking spaces for them, then I think that once we've had that parking study, we need to start thinking strategically
Yes.
about what should be retail parking only and what should be, parking that is available for residents. I think that whole conversation has to come right after we've gotten the comprehensive parking study so that we can kind of think globally about the big picture.
yes. So I guess what right now, because obviously that's something that'll have to come another conversation, but
Right.
perhaps right now, Heidi, in your wisdom, if you could toward this of tweaking the gateway ordinance, which is what,
Mhm.
and I am blown away
Yeah.
by the how productive we were on I knew we
Yeah,
were
we
very
did- we got a
productive,
lot done.
but just by listening to that list of, very important issues, I think, and by saying us, I don't mean just the council, I mean the city manager, assistant city manager, our city attorneys, you and Ed that were here, and Erica, and the input that we've all received from residents on this, obviously, about the issue. We've covered a lot of really, and closing those gaps of, making something that, I don't think anyone wants to see the theater property staying there forever, but we also want to be better, and minimize problems. So perhaps Heidi, if you could think for
Yeah,
that
to
of
the extent
something
that
to
there's a
address
way,
those
yeah.
kinds of things of, a car that's there forever. And the resident says, well, that's my car. I just never use it.
That may be a separate ordinance,
Okay.
but to the
Okay.
extent that we can approach it from a zoning perspective and make revisions in the zoning code that will either promote different types of parking and developments, we can look at it from that aspect. And then separately, there's a more code enforcement type
Perfect.
aspect. And then, of course, a parking program aspect. So it's sort of three-tiered.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else is that all of the comments, Heidi? Or did you have?
I believe it is.
Okay.
Just
I have
actually got it.
two that we discussed, but I don't think we really, we discussed that were important, but we didn't really iron out or, come to a consensus of how. One of them was that it's not necessarily 1.7 FAR increase that's allowed if they reach these enhancements.
Right.
It's up to a maximum of 1.7. So I think it's important, and I think we talked about that at the workshop, for the council to have the wiggle room of saying, yes, these enhancements are nice, but it's not going to be 1.7, it'll be 1.5 or, whatever. So up to,
and I do have that as one of the things, and that's sort of the way I read it. I interpret it that way. And certainly if somebody were to come before the city and think that they were automatically getting a 1.7, that's not necessarily how it would be interpreted. But to the extent, again, that we can clarify the existing language so that it's ultra
clear that even if they present plans that can make it work at 1.7, we can say, 1.7 is too much for this, come back to us with 1.4 or 1.5 or.
Mayor, I think that William had even mentioned that it said, like, he read from the ordinance and it said the up to. I think that one of the things that we may have said is that, or like perhaps adding the language that, it's at the discretion of the city. It's up to that, but at the discretion of the city, so that it gives you the wiggle room that, it's something that you don't have to get just because you feel like you've
Just because you've
provided
provided
it.
the enhancements for the
Mhm.
points. Because there are very unique cases, they're very unique situations. Also, it's not just that lot, as we all know, it's important what's they're next to and
Right.
how it'll impact whatever happens to be next to, no matter how wonderful this project is.
And things
the next
change.
projects, yes. But we also want, for things to be, all new projects to be really nice too. So there's,
No doubt.
and then I guess the other thing is that I remember is with our city planner, there's a part in there that I think it raised a lot of concern that the city planner is the sole person who makes the decision. And I think
Should say just to the city.
the city perhaps, and that, and I guess we're looking at you, Heidi, asking if we put it as the city, is that clear? Or the city planner and the city council, or what can we put in there that it's clear that it's not just one person,
Yeah, I mean,
making that decision? And
again, I think it was explained that it says the city planner because that's normally who makes the recommendation. The technical recommendation does come from the city planner, and that's very, that is typical. But the city planner is giving you that recommendation in consultation with this team of, the city's planning team. And of course, with the city manager, to the extent that there's legal issues, I'm involved. So it is we can certainly make it again clearer.
again, to make that clear in case in the future that comes up and, and it comes before the council and it's kind of like, that's what happened last time. Well, it was the city planner. This is exactly. Does anyone else remember anything on that? Again, thank you, Heidi. And obviously, they're all really, really important. Any of those issues by themselves were important, but just it was just really, again, very productive workshop.
Yep.
Okay, so
Mayor,
then,
may I
Yes, sir.
ask if you could move up 11A so that we can get the chief out of here?
yes, you have somewhere else you'd rather be, chief?
Supper.
Giving out speeding tickets.
Yes, of course. Item, 11A and B then, or is it just A?
Well, just a. for
Okay.
New business.
Is that okay with the council? All right,
Yes, ma'am.
let's move up
Yes.
at item 11A.
Okay, this is a resolution of the mayor and city council of the city of Miami Springs, Florida, approving a memorandum of understanding between the city of Doral Police Department and the Real-Time Operations Center Multi-Agency Intelligence Network, MAIN, providing for implementation and providing for an effective date.
Motion to, I'm sorry.
You just give them a quick explanation of what this is for.
I read it
Just
here.
basically an information sharing network. We're not committing personnel to it other than attending briefings that affect the communities involved, the municipalities involved, headed by Doral.
Is that information sharing like, as far as picking up phones or actual electronic information sharing also?
Whatever comes
Whatever
up intelligence wise,
uh-huh.
Whether it's something that one of our respective agency has, or that we get from other partners, federal agencies and so forth,
Okay.
that we share it amongst each other
Great.
and how it might affect our communities.
Mhm. Motion to move.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Call the vote, please.
Vice Mayor Bravo,
Yes.
Councilman Best.
Aye.
Councilman Behet,
Yes.
Councilman Vasquez,
Yes.
Mayor Mitchell.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, chief.
Thank you.
Good night. Enjoy your dinner.
Good night, Chief.
Okay, so let's move
Should we do 11B?
back. All right, so, a public hearing.
Yes.
Oh, wow. So,
A, this is an ordinance of the city of Miami Springs, Florida, amending chapter 35 retirement systems, article. Is that two or?
Two.
Two,
Two, yeah.
police and firemen pension plan of the city's code of ordinances by amending section 35-51 definitions pertaining to average monthly earnings, amending section 35-53 benefits amount and eligibility to exclude members in the rank of lieutenants and below retiring or entering the drop after December 14, 2021 from the provisions relating to frozen accrued benefits, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing for codification, and providing for an effective date. This is the second reading of the ordinance related to the new contract with the lieutenants.
Through the chair, motion to approve.
Okay, I need to open this for public hearing first. So I'm going to open this item for public hearing. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak? Is there anyone virtually
No, ma'am.
that wants to speak on this? Okay, good. I hope we didn't hold up anyone that wanted to speak with the other. All right, then we'll close the public hearing and I'll accept a motion.
Motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
8-8.
Okay, call the vote. Discussion? Call the vote.
Vice Mayor Bravo.
Yes.
Councilman Best.
Aye.
Councilman Behet.
Yes.
Councilman Vasquez.
Yes.
Mayor Mitchell.
Yes.
The motion carries.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's move along to the consent agenda. We have 2 items under consent agendas. Does anyone want to pull one of the items to discuss them?
Through the chair, motion to move 9A and B.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Call the vote, please.
Vice Mayor Bravo.
Yes.
Councilman Best.
Aye.
Councilman Behet.
Yes.
Councilman Vasquez.
Yes.
Mayor Mitchell.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, old business item, agenda item 10, we have none. We have done 11A, and we need to do 11B.
Correct.
This is a resolution of the mayor and city council of the city of Miami Springs, Florida, accepting a 2022 Neat Streets Miami Street Tree Matching Grant Program Award, approving a tree planting agreement with Miami-Dade County, providing for authorization and providing for an effective date.
Motion to approve.
I'll be
Second.
Good one.
Okay, second.
Second.
Any discussion? I have some questions, Tammy, on this. The reason that we asked for the matching grant for only 27,000, I'm guessing we could have asked for a lot more, is that we need to have the matching grant money, and all we have in the budget is the 25,000. We didn't increase in the budget, the new tree planting?
Not for this year.
Not for this year. Okay. All right. So let's make a mental note of that. In previous councils, a few years back, we had to take money out of our new tree planting to put it into tree maintenance at the request of our Public Works Director and arborist, Tom Nash, because, he said, we can't keep planting new trees and not maintaining the old ones. They'll just tumble over in the storm and we're losing mature trees. So as difficult as it was, there's only so much money in the bucket, and we allocated a large portion to tree maintenance, which is extremely important when we have the mature, beautiful tree canopy that we have. But this is a pittance for us to have a new tree budget of 27,000. So I'm hoping just, keep it in the back of your head for this next budget season, that we can seriously figure out a way to add to that, because
I think, Mayor, one of the things we looked at when we did this, this will get us about 100 trees.
Yeah.
But one of the things we looked at is that both projects that we're doing over on East Drive and on Royal Point Sienna includes trees.
Include
oh,
landscape.
okay, good.
And
All
that's why I think we didn't raise the budget during the budget season,
Okay.
because we were going to get all those included in the project.
Okay, so still for next year, though, that
Yeah.
those trees will be gone. I mean, those new trees. So, when we're applying for grants, ideally we should try to go for as much as we can for the grant money. But if it's matching grants, that's certainly going to limit us to what we have budgeted. So, any other discussion?
No.
Okay, call the vote, please.
Vice Mayor Bravo.
Yes.
Councilman Best.
Aye.
Councilman Behet.
Yes.
Councilman Vasquez.
Yes.
Mayor Mitchell.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Erica. All right, so reports and recommendations. Am I missing any agenda item since we moved around?
Ma'am,
so
you
much?
have effectively knocked them all off.
Got check marks on all of them.
Okay, good. So reports and recommendations from our city attorney.
I won't delay too much. Council, I provided you with an update on the Factory Town case last Thursday for the benefit of the members of the public. The city still has a case pending against Factory Town with respect to the nuisances that were caused at the end of last year. Last week, we received a sound report through their attorney. And the overall, and I'm making this very, very basic, but overall, it seems that Factory Town sound engineers have taken efforts to change the way that the sound is going to be projected during future events, with the intent that the noise be contained to the property that the events are taking place at and not be transmitted into our neighboring city of Miami Springs. Our case will remain open for now, and we are prepared, although and as I said this in my email, we're cautiously optimistic, cautiously being the main term there. But we're cautiously optimistic that Factory Town's efforts will mitigate the noise and avoid a repeat of the events that caused so much difficulty for so many residents. But at this time, no hearings are scheduled, and we feel that we've been able to work with Factory Town as much as possible, and we're hopeful that we can avoid going to court and that they can move forward with their business and be successful, but also protecting the city's residents. So if there's a need to seek an injunction due to any sort of issues that are experienced again, we'll be ready to do so. But at this time, it's sort of status quo.
I guess it'll be telltale the next event, right?
I'll be all ears. Through the chair. I just want to thank the city attorney and the attorneys
yes, and
for
her,
this work.
her-
Some people thought we had no right to make this complaint to begin with, and we were, people were laughing at us, and thinking that, who do we think we are, and so forth and so on, and we are who we are, and we're affected by the noise, and I don't care if it's my favorite salsa band playing. If it's at those decibels, it's not good. So I was very happy to read your email today, and pleased that the folks from Franklin Town have taken this seriously, and they're going to try to do what they do and make the money that they make, but they're going to be very vigilant about this. And if not, then we've got, we've already shown them that we're very serious about this. I don't know about the city of Hialeah or anyone else, but we're not. We're very serious about this. So I appreciate that.
You're very welcome. Also, one more thing. At the next council meeting, my partner, Jose Arango, will be with you in my absence.
Okay. Let's see. So, Councilman Vasquez, since you started.
City manager.
City manager.
Okay.
Report.
Okay. Sorry. Yes. Thank you. City manager.
I don't have anything.
Tammy, what do you have for us?
Tammy might.
But Tammy's got some events that she wants to remind you of.
So the Florida Department of Health will be administering flu shots Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. at our Miami Springs Aquatic Center. So those 18 and older are available to get their flu shot. Also, just remember that the River Cities Festival is happening starting this Friday. So I'm sure you guys will all be there for opening day on the 4th, and then it'll remain on the 5th and the 6th. Also, we have the River Cities 5K run and walk. That'll be happening on Saturday, March 5th at 7 a.m. You'll need to register at the community center, and it's $10 per runner. Also, just want to remind everybody to please subscribe to our weekly newsletter. You need to text all in capital, the word Miami Springs, all capital, to the number 22828, 22828, all capitals, Miami Springs. And then you'll get the weekly newsletter. There's also, starting tomorrow, there'll be boxes in the lobby and as well as the community center We are asking residents to donate any pair of new or gently worn shoes in honor of National Shoe the World Day. So we'll start that collection starting tomorrow, March 1st, and we will conclude that collection on March 31st. And again, it'll be at City Hall and the Community Center. City Hall is open from 8 a.m. to 4:45. And of course, the Community Center is open Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 9:30, and Saturdays and Sundays, 9 to 7. And these shoes will be picked up by the Camilla's House, and they will be collected for benefiting the homeless in South Florida. Also, the Lions Club, in partnership with Farm Share and Miami-Dade County, is hosting another food drive on Friday, March 11th at 9 a.m. at the Lions Club.
And just wanted to remind everyone that the pool is back open again, opened today, right?
Yes.
Today.
Just open.
And also to mention that tomorrow is starts baseball at the high school, and our own Bob Bess is going to be what do you do, MC and referee?
I know. I announced the games. I announced the games. Yeah.
Okay. That's tomorrow at 3:30, right?
Yes, sir.
And
first
we
game.
hope the community supports the team. They have a good baseball team this year. So
Certainly
that's
do.
all we have.
That's wonderful. Okay. Thank you, Tammy, for all of that. I'm always in awe of our little city, the events, the number of events that we have and opportunities for residents to have fun, get engaged, exercise, just to enjoy things here in our city. Councilman Vasquez, again, I'll let you go first since last time you had nothing and I promised you'd go first and you already got started.
Well,
He's got a good amount. He's going to make up for it
I couldn't
tonight.
make it to the end of the meeting on Monday, the last meeting. But anyway, here we go. All right, so I have a couple of things, but the most significant thing is that, and I wrote it up in the form of motion. I don't even know if I could do motions in this report, but the point is this. Our centennial is just 4 short years away. And having participated and helped organize a number of these things along the years, it takes time to envision, to put together and to actually implement a centennial celebration. And I'd like for us to create a Miami Springs Centennial Celebration Commission soon. Maybe a point on the next agenda, but I think we really need to think about this. It does take time to plan. It means money and all kinds of other things, but it's a big deal. And so I'd like to see us, begin this process by creating, a kind of an august body, like a Centennial Celebration Commission to really put this together. It's a little over 4 years. And as the captain reminded us about founder, Captain Glenn Curtis, and the idea that his pioneering work in aviation and Miami Springs' role in the history of aviation, we need to really highlight the fact that we are the aviation city right next to the airport. And so I'd like to see us start this centennial celebration soon. Just 2 more things, and then it was mentioned a couple of times, and we're all aware that the 2 lots, the Hook Square and the opposite Hook Square lot, however the way we call them, have been sold. And William sent us an email giving us some ideas of some of the things that the owners plan to do. It doesn't seem to be any kind of new construction, but it was mentioned earlier tonight, there's going to be some work done there. And so our code ordinances and resolutions apropos. So I'm I was delighted to hear that there's no new construction going on, but it's going to be a big deal for us. As you know, those are important plots of land. And lastly, I was at the Lions Club meeting on Thursday, and I didn't know. I'm sure they advertised this, and as you all know, there's war going on in Ukraine as it was invaded by Russia. The Lions Club, I'm not sure who they were working with, but they were putting together a drive of support items for the people of Ukraine that was going into a trailer that was going to be sent to Poland on Saturday. And so I'd like to just say that for the record and to remind people that not only is the war going on, as we know by watching the news every day, but the people who are affected by the war. And in the case of Poland in particular, which opened its borders to refugees from Ukraine, there are a lot of things that need to be done, food items and other things to be sent. And I want to commend the Lions Club again for being such a stellar organization in this effort, but to be aware in case we hear anything more, and that conflict doesn't seem to be slowing down, on the contrary. And so while I am not necessarily a war hawk, I'm not a war dove either. And I do take exception to, one country invading another, like in this case in particular, a democracy. I've known painfully the histories as a historian, and sometimes it's time to fight. And so I'll just leave it at that. I mean, as you know, I'm a third generation veteran. 3 of my family members are combat veterans, so we know that experience. But I feel for the people of Ukraine who are at the other end of the dropping of those bombs and having to just watching the refugees going into Poland was just heart-wrenching. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilman Fat.
So I just wanted to thank the Miami Springs Historical Society. They had a nice event on Saturday evening where they introduced our new museum director, and I think it was a good time had by all. So if you haven't been out to the new Miami Springs Historical Society Museum over there by Stafford Park, you go on the website, and I think you'll enjoy it. Looking forward to River Cities. And then I had 2 quick questions, if you guys don't mind me asking, just because they came up during the first one. William, where are we on the arborist front? Because Tom's name was invoked a couple of times. I think there were some people within Public Works that were going to get trained for us to have an arborist. Did that?
No, we haven't.
We hired an arborist.
Oh, we hired an arborist?
An outside arborist.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so that's
On
good.
an as-needed basis.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. And then the other question I had, I think we had mentioned it a couple of meetings back, and maybe I missed it on social media, but were we going to try to post some of our traffic citation statistics on social media?
I'm working with the chief on.
Okay.
on something
Yeah,
like that.
because I know we put whenever we arrest bad guys, which is good. It's more good than bad because it shows that we're catching people. But I think the posting traffic citation statistics would be a good thing. I think it's a good thing overall. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Vice Mayor?
Okay, really quick. I just wanted to apologize to the Historical Owner Society for not being there Saturday night at their function. I heard it was beautiful. I heard there was great food, great people. I will be
we were all
extending
there.
myself as I'm going to be a supporting member. At least I can do that. So I encourage people to go and be a supporting member. If you can't be there at all the functions, it's fine. If you could, I think what is it, $35 to sign up
For a
For
family.
family.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you can help your city in little ways like that, imagine, I don't know, 3, 4, 5,000 signups. That's going to take care of a lot for them, for our history. That's one. So let me see, really quick. I will be there on Friday. I hope to see a lot of people at the River Cities Festival, as Tammy mentioned, 5:45 sharp. And please, I would want to encourage our residents to sign up to the newsletter. It's so effective. It's so good. It's vibrant. It's just really exciting to know that we're outreaching in ways that I haven't seen before, me being a resident. So I thank William and Tammy for working on that together with Shannon. I had one little quick question for Heidi, if that's okay. Okay, so I did look at the Factory Town report and I saw, how they're going to be distributing their sound waves in that circular vicinity or stage area. I was wondering if it was too much, if it's okay. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. If we can ask them to do a sound testing day during day hours at what they expect to boom the sound, so we can expect it. It'll be, hey, we're going to be testing this day, just giving you a heads up. So that way, if we do hear something, but at least it's happening during the day, so we know what to expect. I don't know. They didn't offer it in the report, but I was just wanting to venture into that option. I don't know.
I would say,
No?
Councilwoman, Vice Mayor, that's something you should probably discuss with Heidi separately since we're in the
Yes.
process
Okay.
of
Sorry.
litigation.
My
with
apologies.
that. So,
I think that's it. I have nothing else to say. Thank you.
I get to be Councilman Vasquez today, huh?
No.
You know how it feels.
Saving the best.
The mayor-
for last.
the mayor's always-
Best for
I
last.
get to be Councilman Vasquez. Just mainly reiterations. That's the role that this takes, The baseball, the opening day for the Miami Springs High School, as mentioned earlier by the manager, is tomorrow afternoon at 3:30 on Dove. And we appreciate certainly the help that the city will afford us in terms of the tent and the sound system to be able to call that game. So that's much appreciated. Actually, there's 3 games this week, Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. So I'm going to have to run to get to my second item, which is the festival opening ceremonies at 6:00 after doing a ball game. That's 6:00 start, right? The opening ceremonies? Is it,
I thought it was 5:45.
5:45? Okay, well, if I'm there at 10 of, you heard it here, okay? Anyway, that's going on. The festival is having been to a couple of the festival committee meetings. It's going to be somewhat of a compressed festival this year. And it's going to be some adjustments on the circle. It is going from for-profit to non-for-profit. It's going back and forth a couple times over the years. But Julie Arias is doing it this year, and she's doing it non-for-profit. Just so folks are aware of that. And they will incorporate a lot more of Westward Drive than they have in the past, going all the way down about to the Baptist Church, actually. Quite frankly, I don't know why, and I asked this the other night at the meeting. I says, why can't we get on the west side of Canal Street? But they're not using it. I don't know. Anyway, it's an open issue. Saturday morning, Little League opening ceremonies, 10:00 for all the little guys in town getting out there to play baseball. Maybe they can show the big guys how to do it, right? And then finally, just to reiterate again, what was said earlier on the Historical Society meeting the other night, was a wonderful, wonderful event. And as Councilman Fahed brought up, Seth Bramson was installed as a new director of the Historical Society. And I was sitting talking, I'm going to finish on this story. I was sitting talking to this gentleman, my wife and I, and we were talking baseball, and we're talking back and forth, and we must have been going for 45 minutes. We had a drink, and this and that. And I didn't know his name. He didn't know my name. So Seth Bromson gets up there. He gets introduced by Jennifer Graham, and he gets up there and he's going on and he says, I'd like to bring to the front a very good friend of mine who lugs all my stuff around all the time. Mr. Ted Grossman from WLRN. He does the Night Train, the jazz show. And I'd been sitting talking to this guy. We're talking about like the 59 White Sox and the 43 Phillies and stuff, naming lineups, like back and forth baseball history, just having a hoot. I didn't even know who he was. And so he got introduced and he got up to go to the front and he looks at me and he goes, what a trip. I've listened to that guy for 15 years, at least, at night.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was just, it's one of those things that doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's certainly memorable, so I'll just share that with you all. That's all I have, Mayor. Thanks very much.
Mayor, I'm sorry, I got one
Thank
more
you.
plug.
You
I
have
thought
what?
Bob was going to mention it, but
The American Legion is going to be at the fair the 3 days.
Thank you, Councilman.
And we're going to be selling bricks
Selling brick.
for sale for $50 for the War Memorial.
Very good.
So come by and see
For the
us.
War Memorial on Westward. the
That is
new War-
correct.
War-
That
Right
is
here in
correct.
Miami
Yes,
Springs.
correct.
That's going to
That is
be a
correct.
showcase for Miami
You
Springs.
see,
It's
Victor, you
really
just
going to
taught
be-
us something. Going last isn't always that bad.
Okay, and okay,
went
thank you
last
for
after all,
mentioning that.
see?
Right. Speaking of bricks, the Historical Society, in
Yes.
addition to the family membership, and it was a lovely event. It was a lot of fun. Actually, it was a lot of fun. It really was. We were
great.
laughing, and
It
it's
was
Seth,
great.
of course. Seth Ranson has been a friend. My husband and he
Yeah.
have taught together in a university at the university level for years and years, and we've been friends with him for
It's cool.
30 something. I don't even know how long, but he's always a hoot. And very knowledgeable. By no means am I diminishing his knowledge and expertise, but he brings a lot of fun to events. But they are also selling bricks for the Historical Society at $100. So in addition to the family membership, there's the opportunity to buy a brick. So that's two opportunities where, and with that, with the bricks, there's so many places in Miami Springs where you go and you see someone's name, a family name at the Let's Build It or at the bricks, the golf course and all. And that's so, it really is a legacy that you're leaving, that for your future friends, but family members, grandkids and all, that they see that, oh my God, our
Yep.
family name is there. So I want to encourage everyone to do that, to support our clubs when they do that. I wanted to, again, thank Heidi and her firm for the two issues, the Factory Town issue, and also for the workshop, the information that you and Ed provided during that, the guidance on helped us, I think, deal or come to consensus on how we wanted to handle some of these issues that were still kind of out there and hadn't been tapped. The Little League that Councilman Best mentioned, the Little League opening ceremony, if you haven't been to it, oh my gosh, it is so much fun because there's so many teams there. It's like the Marlins and I don't know all these baseball teams, but they're all, and each group of kids have their own uniforms and they represent certain teams. And it's just a delightful morning ceremony. It's not that long. Councilman, I'm sure you'll be speaking at it. And, but it really is a fun time. And it's a really big group of just our youth there and their parents. So I really encourage everyone on the council to make the time to attend at 10 a.m. this Saturday at Prince Field, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, the newsletter. I know Vice Mayor Bravo mentioned the newsletter. It is our newsletter. And that was one of the items that we talked about at our workshop in May about priorities. And we said we need to improve our social media, our communications with our residents. We need to just really get better at that. And our newsletter right now is, so I wanted to just thank Shannon, our public information officer. I know she's doing a lot of work on this, but our newsletter now, you quickly just glance and it's colorful, it's bright, it's easy to see.
Click
And
on the items.
yeah,
that
and you
want.
see so much information of what's happening in Miami Springs. So I know it'll continue to get even better with her expertise and her passion for this. Let's see what else. River Cities, we're all looking forward to that. This is once a year. It's the big event that, we all can hang out and see friends and neighbors and people we haven't seen in ages. So I'm really, I think after 2 years of not being able to have this, our community is really ready to celebrate with this. And I think that's all. So thank you all for being here for a great meeting, and see you in
On Friday.
March.
Thank you,
On
Mayor.
Friday. Yeah, River City's opening. All right. Usually at the circle. Hang around the circle and they find you. Thank you. Oh, I forgot to mention.